Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntables, the show where we blend the love of music with the love of whiskey. Tonight, I'm a lone wolf. I'm riding solo. So what we're doing is, or what I'm doing, there's no we, because it's just me. Well, it's me and Fletch back here. So what Fletch and I are going to do today is I'm going to do kind of a series of these sometimes when I don't have guests on the show. And I'm going to call it, since I'm riding solo, I'm going to call it Solo Albums and Single Barrels. So today I'm going to be talking about Sting's first solo album, The Dream of the Blue Turtles, and I'm going to be talking about a Russell's Reserve single barrel. So that's what's coming up. But what else you need to know about is right here, if I can find, there we go, Bar Cart Co-op. The Bar Cart Co-op is a collection of friends who provide content for the whiskey enthusiast in you. We have shows like Distillers Talk with Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. They talk to distillers from across the country and around the world about anything and everything distillation. Alan also has a show, One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute, where you can pose questions to him about a distilling problem you may be having, or just a question or inquiry, and Alan will post video responses to your questions. Alan also has a show that he does with his wife, Kim, called If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything. And on this show, they depart from distillation and spirits and get into the spiritual and the supernatural and the esoteric and the weird and the unexplained. It's a very interesting show. You need to check it out. A lot of fun. So that is If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything. Every Monday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central Time, where you need to be is watching My Whiskey Den with Pat and Mike and Mitch. Join in on the fun. You can be in the chat room. Always fun to be with those folks and post snarky remarks. Not that I would have ever done that in my life, but Pat and Mike and Mitch will have interesting tastings and fun guests. So be sure to check that out. And then we also have Whiskey in My Wedding Ring with David Levine. David is a great writer and an excellent podcast host. He'll have distillers on and quiz them about the products that they're making. So you'll really enjoy that from David. So we've got this stuff going on with Bar Cart that you need to know about as well. And that is actually, as this show will be out on July 10th, on July 11th, we will have Distilling History with Steve Bayshore of George Washington's Mount Vernon, Eric Wolf from Stolen Wolf Distillery, and Alan Bishop from Old Homestead Distilling Company. I'll be hosting that conversation, and we'll just be talking about some of the projects that they've had going on. Really interesting stuff. You'll want to be sure to check that out. They've spent some time at Mount Vernon with Steve and working on some projects there, and then Alan and Eric are working on some projects at Stolen Wolf Distillery in Pennsylvania, and we'll catch up with Alan and see what he's got going on at Old Homestead as well. So be sure to check that out. Distilling History. Look it up on the Bar Cart Facebook page, and you'll see all the details there. All right, so that's a lot of the background information that you need to know. Please follow along. If you're watching our show right now, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. We would appreciate that. That helps us out a lot, and it's just really good stuff. So thank you very much for doing that. Also, want to promote a few things tonight, some things that some friends have going on. And so I'm going to start out. One second while I put my hat on. Alpine Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. You need to check that out. If you are a musician looking for a place to record, contact Lorenzo Venturella. He's your guy. And Lorenzo has done some work with Drew Crowley, who's formerly of the show, and also with Kevin Niehoff, who has been a guest on this show, and Lorenzo's doing some really cool stuff there. So check out Alpine Studios. You can follow them on Instagram at _Alpine Studios _. So you got that bookended underscore there for Alpine Studios. So check that out, please. Also, wanted to tell you about our friend Austin Huff over at Corked Bats. Austin's been on the show a few times. He's, as you may remember, he is on US 99 in Chicago. He's on a morning show, Melissa and Austin in the mornings. So check that out. And he's he always has these cool little products that he puts out, merch and stuff. So I want to show you this. This is a shirt. Okay. People are asking. People are asking. So what? I don't know. Just a little catchphrase he's been fooling around with. So check out Austin there as well. So I'm gonna take off my hat now. All right. In addition to telling you a little bit about Austin and Lorenzo, want to tell you if you are in the Middle Tennessee or Kentucky area on Saturday, you can go see a couple of our friends playing at the Grove in Glasgow, Kentucky. Mojo Thunder will be there. They're the headlining act, and Van Winkle and the Spirits, who were on the show just a few weeks ago, they'll be there as well. I do not know Spooky Fox, but I imagine that they must be pretty good if they're playing with these other two bands. Mojo Thunder, they've got a new album coming out in August, and we'll probably have them as a guest on the show early in the next month. So check all of that out if you do not mind. So, as I said, we're going to do solo albums and single barrels today. We're going to start with our single barrel because I don't want to wait too long before I have something to drink. And the single barrel, as I mentioned, is a Russell's Reserve single barrel. There you go. Very familiar label. And this is the specific bottle. And the reason I chose this one is I helped pick it. So this is a Russell's Reserve that I helped pick with Westport Whiskey and Wine here in Louisville. If you don't know the story behind Russell's Reserve, I can fill you in a little bit there. 1998, Eddie, I've named all of them now. Jimmy Russell, his son Eddie, set aside 23 barrels in 1998, thinking, well, this is the 45th anniversary in 98 of his dad working there. I'm going to set aside some barrels. So when he finally does retire, we'll have a big blowout and we've got some great barrels for him. Little did Eddie know, Jimmy's still going strong, and we're all thankful for that. But it kind of spoiled that plan. So they did go ahead and come out with the Russell's Reserve brand as a 10-year bourbon in 2001. Now, it wasn't taken from those 23 barrels that Eddie set aside, but they started it. And the first time Russell's Reserve hit the market was in 2001. It was a 10-year small batch and 101 proof. Now, while through the years, there've been a lot of different products that have come out from Wild Turkey with the Russell Reserve name. They've got 10-year, they've got rye, they've got a 13-year, they got single rickhouse, single barrel, and private barrel selection, which is what we're talking about here. Okay. So there's a lot going on with that. The first time they started doing the single barrel selections were in 2014, and they all come out at 110 proof. And to finish the first part of the story, the barrels that were set aside in 1998, those were actually released in 2015. And right now, if you can find one out on the secondary market, it'll draw about $4,000. So if you've got it, why didn't you drink it? But if you've got it, you've got something that's got a lot of value to it. So let's go ahead. I'm going to take a sip of this Russell's Reserve. I've had a couple of bottles of this set aside. Yeah, you can see Chris Zaborowski's autograph on there. Like I said, Chris was with Westport Whiskey and Wine at the time. But this is probably my third bottle of this. So it's very good. I really enjoy it. So cheers to everybody. The nose is kind of cherry cola, orange. I think a good Russell's usually has a little bit of orange in there. This also has some spice to it, nutmeg, cinnamon. On the palate, there's some caramel that kicks in. That orange is still there. There's some brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, both still there. Maybe just a hint of vanilla, but not a lot. The finish is a nice cola, maybe a little sorghum uh, note, some charred oak, some pepper. So it's got some nice balance between the sweetness and the spiciness and the oak. So this was really good. I did a great job picking this. I did a great job sitting back and watching everything that Chris did and how he picked barrels because he's the master. If you haven't had a chance to have a barrel that Chris had picked, then that's a shame because he was truly a legend in that, and he had since retired, which is a shame. But Chris has always meant a great deal to me in my own whiskey journey. He taught me a lot, and it was a great honor and pleasure to pick this bottle alongside him. So, Russell's Reserve. Here's the thing you need to know about a Russell's Reserve private barrel selection. There is no such thing as a bad one. I've had, I don't know, dozens over the years. Not a bad one. Not even one that's, a B minus. They're all really, really good. So they granted, Wild Turkey's got a lot to select from, but I think it does speak a lot to the quality of what they have in their stock that they can go through so many private barrel picks, and they're all very good. And there's usually some consistency in some of the tasting notes there, but there's also going to be some variations too, where one thing may be a little more out front in one barrel, and another barrel may be will obviously be a little different. But there's usually some commonality there that you look for in those Russell's Reserve private barrel selections. So if you find one, grab it. Wherever it is, whatever store you're in or bar you're in that may have a, a bottle of their private selection pick for sale, just get it because it's good. It's always good, consistently good. And this one's obviously very special to me. So cheers. So want to get into talking about solo albums in just a minute. But before I do that, I want to give you a little update on what we've got coming up on the show next week, which will be July 17th. We'll have Chris Tapp of the Cold Stairs. Chris has been on a couple times. Chris has some really cool stuff going on. He's got a new album coming out with the band. He also has a new solo album coming out. He's got a guitar that he purchased in an auction that belonged to Peter Green of Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, and so the album is going to be called Green, and he's using that guitar on every song on the album. So that'll be pretty cool. And then the band, the Cold Stairs, they've got an album coming out as well. There've been a few songs released. I've been able to hear a few others. I've seen some others perform live. It just kicks butt. They just every step they take, every thing that they do, the next one is just better than the last one, and this will be no exception. The name of that album will be called The Southern. So we'll be talking with Chris about a lot of stuff. Then the week after that, we'll be back with our friends Parker Barrow, Megan Kane, and Dylan Turner will be joining us. It'll be great to catch up with them. I would adopt them. I think they're just adorable. They're super sweet people and amazingly talented. They're on a superstar trajectory, so jump in now while you can. They've got a tour that's going all across the country. We'll get into more of that with them and where you can see them. So be sure to check that out as well. Then we're going to round out the month with an old friend, Benjamin Eves. distiller at large. Yeah, Ben, as some of you know, was one of the original co-hosts of Bourbon Turntable. He was also one of the co-hosts on My Whiskey Den. Ben is now a distiller at Kentucky Artisan Distillery, and so Ben and I are going to catch up on a few things there. We've got some really cool things picked out to taste together, to sample together, which will be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about music. We'll probably get into talking about the band Tool and some other things that Ben says he's been listening to. And so it'll be fun. It'll be great to catch up with Benji. He's a good friend, and glad to see that he's having some success that is well deserved over at Kentucky Artisan. So now, solo album. So the this Sting solo album that we'll be talking about, uh, The Dream of the Blue Turtles. The reason I picked this one is it was really the first big band that I followed from their beginning that had a breakup and then had one of the members come out with a solo album. You know, there were Paul McCartney and John Lennon solo albums and Pete Townsend solo albums and things of that nature that were floating around, that came out uh, uh, during my lifetime when I was aware of music on my own. But the Police was a band that I started listening to from the beginning, and then the first real breakup album, or whatever you want to call it, would have been Dream of the Blue Turtles. Saw Sting in concert supporting that album. And it's a very interesting album. So he leaves the Police, and starts off on his own journey. And I mean, there was some risk with what he did here, because if you've not heard the Dream of the Blue Turtles, you should, because there's a lot of great stuff there. But he took the approach of, he didn't play it safe. He went with he made a jazz rock fusion album when the Police were at the height of their popularity, uh, following the release of the Synchronicity album and the tour that followed. So he could have just kept doing what he was doing, and sold a bunch of records and made a bunch of money. He chose to do something different, take a little risk, but he's still sold a bunch of records and made a bunch of money. But again, it was a risk. It was different. Um, and he went out and recruited some outstanding musicians to support him on this album. Omar Hakim played drums. Omar Hakim played drums for Weather Report. He played drums on a couple of David Bowie albums, including Let's Dance, which is one of my favorites. He played drums with Chic after Tony Thompson passed away. So very accomplished drummer. We'll get into some of the details with about him in a minute. Daryl Jones played bass. Daryl Jones had played bass for Miles Davis previously, and now is the bass player for the Rolling Stones since Bill Wyman quit the band, since he retired. And I think he married like a 15-year-old girl or something stupid like that. But Daryl Jones has been playing bass with the Rolling Stones, both on tour and in studio, for, gosh, quite a while now, I guess. Kenny Kirkland was on piano. Kenny Kirkland played for the great Wynton Marsalis. He also played with Branford Marsalis, who's also in Sting's band. And he was on the Tonight Show band with Jay Leno. Well, Jay Leno wasn't on the band, but Tonight Show with Jay Leno, I couldn't imagine Jay Leno being in a band. But anyway, Kenny Kirkland played piano, and sadly passed away, I believe, is late 90s, like 98 or something. And the aforementioned Branford Marsalis, he played the saxophone on Dream of the Blue Turtles. He also had his own quartet and had an excellent cameo in the movie Throw Mama from the Train. So if you've not seen that movie, now you've got some homework. in addition to listening to this album if you haven't listened to it. So uh, there it is in vinyl. Didn't quite fit the screen, but you get the idea. Um, when you go through this album, there's a real mix of songs that really get into the whole jazz rock fusion thing, and there's some that don't quite. They're a little more uh, popish, a little less jazz. Um, and the album kicks off with "If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free." This was basically Sting's counterbalance to the song "Every Breath You Take," which, if you actually listen to the lyrics, it's a very, very creepy, stalky kind of song. And for some reason, people want to have it played at their wedding for their first dance. I don't know. I would be very worried if I were you, if that's you at that wedding. Uh, but if you love somebody, set you free, set them free is it's a really good song. It kind of is a good blend of the jazz rock, some great saxophone in there from Branford Marsalis. Then the next track on the album is "Love Is the Seventh Wave." It's kind of got a reggae influence, and this album came out in '85, and even in '85, you know, Sting says of this song that we're what he's looking for. How do we get better? How do we do better when everything around us is so terrible? Well, we're still around nearly 40 years later, and some things in some ways are far, far worse, but we can still cling to the hope that we can get better. Then he comes. There are a couple of songs after that on the first side of the album. First side of the album. Yes, we're actually talking about the vinyl here. We're the original vinyl. We're not looking at the CD. We're not looking at the streaming. Um, the song called "Russians," which is very, very dark, talking about nuclear war. And the only hope we have of avoiding nuclear war is if the Russians love their children too. Well, okay. Uh, Very grim song. And then "Children's Crusade" is another grim tune out of World War One, talking about World War One atrocities and such. So they're really well done songs. There's a lot of imagery in those songs, but they're not the ones that you're going to play at your party unless you want everybody to leave, because this will shut it down. Now the song that closes out the first side of the album is a song called "Shadows in the Rain," which was actually on a Police album. It was on Zenyatta Mandata. And this is a much more upbeat, bright, driving tune on the solo album. I really like the way they did it. Uh, Really, really good stuff. Start out the second side of the album, side two, with "We Work the Black Seam," which takes up the really fun topic of uh, the Kingdom coal miner strike. Okay, but again, very beautiful song, really well done, but again, not a happy tune. "Consider Me Gone" is a really terrific song, and it's, to me, it shines even better live, which we'll talk about in just a second. Then we come to the title track, "Dream of the Blue Turtles," which is just a very short jazz instrumental song, and this one leans very heavily into the jazz side of the jazz rock. Um, "Moon Over Bourbon Street" is a song that is inspired by the book Interview with a Vampire. Um, and it's kind of got that dark moodiness to it, but it's fun to listen to. Enjoy it a lot. Then the album closes out with a song called "Fortress Around Your Heart." Um, it actually feels a little bit more like a Police song than it does a fit on uh, this solo album, maybe with the saxophone solos throughout. That makes it a little more jazzy, but still a little more rock than jazz. So uh, the to me the best thing that came out of this first solo album was this live album called Bring On the Night. It's a double album, and it is chocked, and this is it right here. Um, this is, to me, this surpasses the studio album, and for a lot of reasons. Uh, the studio album is, despite the jazz rock fusion uh, goals, it's still very radio play friendly in that the songs are, hit that, 3 to 5 minute time frame mostly. Whereas on this, we're getting some really extended and fun instrumental riffs on this. Just some great jam stuff going on here. Um, and there's a lot more Police covers on this. Um, and Sting did do when he performed live in support of this album. He did do Roxanne uh, with the band, uh, but that's not on this album. But that's okay. What is on this album is really really great. Um, for Police tunes, Bring On the Night, When the World Is Running You Down, You Make the Best of What's Still Around. Both great Police songs, great covers of that, if you will. On this, uh, to me, one of the highlights of this live album is "Driven to Tears." Again, police song, but it really goes on this, and there's some great piano solos. There's great um, sax solos. The bass line is just out of this world, and um, some of the drum fills in this by Omar Hakim were just mind blowing. So you'll want to check that out. Demolition Man and other Police songs on here. One World is on here. I Burn for You is on here. Uh, and Tea in the Sahara is on here. So great uh, live album. Uh, I like the studio album. I like the live album better. I just think there's more meat to it. Um, and in terms of Sting himself, I failed to mention that he played six-string guitar on "The Dream of the Blue Turtles." He had played bass for his years in the Police, so that's what he played there. But the thing that really stands out about Sting is he is a tremendous vocalist and an excellent songwriter and a pretentious douchebag par excellent, because that's the way he would say it, because that sounds really haughty and douchey. Uh, but yeah, Sting's just got that reputation, and uh, I think that kind of shines through a lot of this. There's a documentary film that went along with the making of the album, the studio album, called "Bring On the Night." Uh, if you've not seen that, you should check it out. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things to it. It gives you some background on how the album is made and some of the things that they go through. And Sting has Sting's first child is born during the documentary, and so that's in there too. Um, so, but there's it's a really interesting portrayal of how an album gets made and everything else that's going on around it. Uh, but you know, Sting, even in that, I don't know how heavily edited it was, but Sting he's a very pretentious dude, and there's I've not heard any stories from anybody that would say otherwise. And his arrogance and desire to be the center of attention all the time, led to the downfall of the police. If you don't believe me, you can read basically anything that Andy Summers or Stuart Copeland have had to say about it, which is a shame. Which is a shame because Sting's an extremely talented guy. I think that he just is so full of himself, and you see, he's. We don't need to hear. Uh, uh, Don't Stand So Close to Me played on the lute while you sing it in French. Nobody cares about that stuff, Sting. Play your songs. Play the songs. Write cool songs because you do that. Just play them and be a human being along with the rest of us. So anyway, that's the solo album that I wanted to talk about. Again, if you've not listened to Dream of the Blue Turtles, highly recommend it. If you've not listened to Bring on the Night, highly recommend it. And I would highly recommend the video too, the documentary video. So those are. Let me know what you think about this. Just trying to focus on some cool things, different things than what we may have done in the past on the show. Yeah, we're talking about music, we're talking about whiskey, but kind of in a different light with the solo albums and the single barrels. If there's any solo album that you think, hey, this would be fun to talk about, fun to hear more about, leave me a comment in the chat, and we'll take care of that. We'll make sure that happens. So, getting ready to wrap things up, and before I do that, I want to tell you where you can find us. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. We would appreciate it. If you're listening to the show on your favorite podcast platform, we thank you very much for that as well. We very much appreciate your support. We have a Facebook page where we will post all of our shows, including this one. We have a Facebook group where you can tell us what you're drinking and what you're listening to while you're drinking it. Today, been listening to this. I've been drinking this. So probably will post that on Facebook as well. So again, thank you all very much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate your patronage and support. Tell your friends. We would thank you for doing that. And until next time, when we have Chris Tapp of the Cold Stairs, cheers, love, and Freebird! People are asking. Night.